Okay, Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalat wassalam ala Rasulullah. You're welcome to our third day of the Dhul Hijjah series, and the topic today is slowing down.
Okay, Bismillah
Oops,
walhamdulillah
I forgot to
wassalat
mute
wassalam.
the broadcast. There we go. And so today's topic is slowing down in this fast-paced, stressful, and overwhelming life where it doesn't seem like there's enough time to get it all done. It doesn't seem like there's a solution to what's happening, and it all seems too much. Or is it? Is there another way of thinking about it? That's what we're going to find out, inshallah. So I think that it's very common in this time and this very fast-paced life that we're living, where it all feels like it's overwhelming, it's very stressful, it's all too much, and that we have a lot of thinking going on around how we're going to get it all done, how we're going to manage everything, and finding it a challenge to juggle everything. And so a lot of people walking around very stressed and overwhelmed. And there is a way of slowing down and still getting things done without all the stress and overwhelm. And that's what the topic is today. So I am someone who is always a busy person, and I used to be someone who was so busy that I was stressed and overwhelmed all the time. However, now I don't feel that stress and overwhelm, but I'm not less busy. In fact, I'm actually even more productive than I was. And there's also a myth out there that people think that they need to have the stress in order to be productive, that without having the pressure and the stress that they would actually be lazy or complacent and they wouldn't get things done. I don't think that is true either. And it comes from some misconceptions that we have about life and our human experience. So the first one is that, well, the first truth is that we are naturally motivated. You just have to look at a young child. Well, let's look at a baby that or a toddler that's at the age where they're just learning to stand up and walk. They are just motivated to learn and to keep going and keep trying until they master it. And they don't need any rewards for that. They don't need any encouragement. They will naturally be motivated. So I would like us to brush away the idea that we need to be stressed in order to be productive, because it's not true. In fact, if we're finding ourselves lacking productivity, it's because of the thinking we've got going on in the way of our natural motivation to be productive. So now that we've put that aside, let's focus on the stress and the overwhelm, which is really the focus of today's topic. Now that we know that we don't need that stress and that to the point that we become overwhelmed in order to be productive. So why is it now, even though I am more busy with more responsibilities now than I was before, I'm less stressed and less overwhelmed? Because I understand that stress and overwhelm is not coming from my workload or what I have to get done, but the way I'm thinking about it. And if I think about it differently, then I don't have to be stressed and overwhelmed. I can actually be very productive and very calm at the same time. Get heaps done without the stress and overwhelm along with it. So one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ taught us was there's a time for this and a time for that. That's one of the hadiths that we have, right? And the only time that this moment in time is for is doing what you're meant to be doing in this moment of time. And if we can bring our thinking to the point that we're just focusing on what we're doing right now, being very present in this moment, the stress and the overwhelm fall away. I think we have this misconception, though, that if we just focus on what we're doing right now, that we will misjudge it and not have enough time for the other things. And so we need to keep the other things on our mind in order to make sure that we balance out our time. Or we think that if we don't have all the things in our mind all the time, that we're going to forget something. And it's true, we do forget things. But we forget things whether we try to keep everything on our mind or not. And so that keeping everything on our mind because we think that we'll forget something or we won't judge our time well enough because if we don't keep it all on our mind is also a misconception, because it's not true. It only just fills our head with so much overload that we don't need, overthinking that we don't need. So when we can be present in the moment and just think about what we need to do right now and trust the fact that there is all the time that we need to get everything done, that we will be guided by Allah when to move on to the next thing that we're meant to be doing, that He is the one who knows how much time that we need for each thing, and we don't necessarily know because we don't know what hiccups are going to come along the way, what extra challenges or extra work are going to come along the way. And so we enter into this state of being in the present moment with a sense of tawakkul, total reliance and trust in Allah, that everything is going to unfold exactly as it's meant to unfold. So for instance, this week, I was actually quite unwell. And you probably can hear I'm still a bit croaky. My voice and everything's sort of coming back good again now, alhamdulillah. And there are so many things I didn't do. So many things that were part of what I was meant to do last week. People waiting on me for things. But I had no choice but to put the tools down and not do any of them because I really couldn't even think clearly. I was that unwell. And if I sat up for too long, I felt really dizzy. So I had to put everything down. And then when I started to feel better over these last couple of days, there was every opportunity to get completely overwhelmed by all the things that I need to do. Like, for instance, showing up here. I'd planned everything and put it out there and announced that I was going to be here every single day at the same time for half an hour to talk about a specific topic. And it's 6:30 in the morning here now, so it's just after Fajr here now because it's winter here, so Fajr is later. And when you're unwell, it's not the best time to be trying to be productive. But you know what? Allah gave me the strength to show up on the first day. And alhamdulillah, I felt that it went quite well. I even was quite productive these last couple of days, more than I had been, but nowhere near caught up. But I'm not stressed and overwhelmed because I'm in a state of tawakkul, that everything will happen in the timing that Allah has planned for me, that it wasn't part of my plan to get sick, but these are the things that happen in life. And if we're going to get stressed, if we're going to get into stressful thinking about them, like, oh, now I'm behind on this and I'm behind on that, and what will they think that I haven't done this yet and I haven't done that yet? Well, the reality is when I reached out to people and let them know I was sick, everybody was okay. They said, look after yourself. So a lot of our stress and our overwhelm, if you reflect on it, if you notice what you're thinking, you're creating your own whirlwind of stress and overwhelm in a whole lot of stories around what you need to get done, and how you're going to manage or cope with everything. Put your trust in Allah. Come to the present moment. When you're in that, when you slow right down to that quiet state, you'll just know what's the right thing to start with. And quite often, it's starting with something that's easy, something that you can knock off pretty quickly, because that gets that kind of intrinsic motivation going again, because it's like, oh, good, one thing's ticked off the list. It kind of gives you a sense of achievement, and then you're on a roll. And that's all it takes. All it takes is start with the first thing and only focus on that for as long as you're meant to be focusing on that. Then you focus on the next thing and you stay focused on that. We don't multitask. That's a myth as well. I heard one of my teachers tell me that we think that when we're multitasking, that we're achieving more things. But in fact, we're not. How she described it was, if we're focusing on one thing, 100% of our attention is on one thing. Maybe not 100%, because we all get a little bit distracted and our mind strays here and there. So let's say 90, 95%. She said, for every extra task you try to multitask with, take 20% off, because there's time in switching between tasks, right? And so if you then decide to do two tasks at once, it means that you're only working at 80% capacity. If you add a third task, it's like 60%. So as you can see, like our productivity decreases. So there's no point trying to do multiple things at once. Just focus on the one thing. Now, if you have an ADHD brain like mine, you might find that hard some days. Like yesterday, I tried to focus on one thing, but I kept seeing something else and I would get distracted. Now, I was still only doing one thing at a time, but I wasn't managing to stay on the one thing at a time. I kept drifting off onto other things and then having to remind myself to come back. But that's just an added test. You know, my brain functions a little bit differently. And so sometimes it's hard for me to be focused on the one task. So I don't let myself get stressed and overwhelmed by that, by getting into all the thinking of, woe is me, I have ADHD. Oh, look, that rhymed. And I can't focus. It was more a case of just when I noticed I drifted off, it was usually like if I went to a different screen to look for something, I would see something else on that screen. And it would distract me from what I was there for. And then I would go, oh, that's not why I'm here. And so I'd get myself back on task again. So I still got things done. Wasn't as productive as a day when I'm quite focused, but that's okay. I still got things done. I'm still closer. And that's the other key. The other key in how we think about it is thinking, look how far I've come. Look at what I've done, rather than look at how much more I've got to do, how far I've got to go. Because that's where our stress and overwhelm comes from, when we see how much further we've got to do, how much more we've got to do. And instead of looking at how far we've come, because when we look at how far we've come, it brings us great hope that we'll get there, because we go, oh, wow, look, as I've chipped away at it, I've actually got quite a lot further than I anticipated. So what I'm unpacking for you here is, as you can hear, my voice is getting croakier and croakier, is it's the way you think about it that brings the stress and the overwhelm. And if you think about it differently and frame it in a state, in the form of tawakkul, trusting that Allah is going to give you everything you need, including the time that you need to get it done, then your mind settles down and you focus and you get things done. And it's same because I put in the description about problems to solve or think it doesn't seem like there's a solution for what's happening. Or another way of thinking about it, it's the same kind of shift, a shift to tawakkul. So really today is a lot about tawakkul on Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Talaq in verses 2 and 3 that as long as we are conscious of him, he will find a way out for us from every difficulty and provide for us from means that we could not even imagine. And whoever puts their trust in Allah, Allah is sufficient for them. The answer to everything I've just told you today is in those two verses. So number one, we may have a specific problem that we can't see the answer to, or our problem might be that we're in overwhelm because there's so many things to get done. Well, he has said if we're conscious of him, he will find a way out for us. How are we conscious of him in this moment? Having tawakkul, trusting that he is going to show us the way, trusting that just because we can't see how we can get it done or we can't see the solution to the situation doesn't mean there isn't one. We trust it and we just move forward. And when we have that trust, then Allah has said he is sufficient for us. Those verses are the answer. So the next time you feel yourself getting really stressed and overwhelmed and everything looks like it's, as they say, bigger than Ben-Hur, and you really have this, almost can get anxious and panicky about it, but your head is just spinning. Just stop. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding you every single moment of every day, and he can guide you to what is the right thing for you to be doing right now, and trust that that's the only thing you're meant to be doing right now, that everything else will come in its time, and then just get started. That's it. That's how you slow down in this crazy, stressful, overwhelming life that we're living. Alhamdulillah. So I'm really excited to have a few people in the room with me today. And I would love you to ask any questions if you have a question, or to share with me a takeaway that you took from what I shared today. Anyone, you can come on the mic, or you can type it in the chat if you are shy to come onto the mic. Anyone got a question?
I think, Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah, I think I have an issue with being persistent, you know,
Okay.
with like
Tell
sort
me,
of stress.
what you mean. Tell me what you mean by you have an issue with being persistent.
So it's like when I'm really stressed, and I overcome it by doing tawakkul and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave things in his hand. I reflect, I'm learning to reflect each day to improve and become better from what the day has passed and see the next day as a new day.
Mm-hmm.
And that is helping. And the reason I sort of joined is obviously I think you need to be connected to sort of Islamic groups like yourself to bring you back to deen. If you listen to these conversations, you're able to put them in your life more regularly.
Yeah.
But when you do it on your own, sometimes you forget in the busy world. And that's why, I mean, I've tried other groups and things like that, and I like your style. You seem very similar to me. And I do motivational coaching. And whatever I teach, I don't implement it in my life.
that,
And
that
then, mm,
it's challenging then, isn't it?
yeah, it is. And then I learn. I think, I think I'm learning. And I think the biggest difficulty for a woman is when she's going through the 40s, menopause cycle. Your hormones are all over the place. You start reflecting so deeply that many women even end up divorcing because they sort of conclude the whole life and they think, oh, that's a very miserable life. Because I think most women, I know there's a brother there, but most women assume life starts at 40. But from an Islamic perspective, I think, 40 years, I'm 40 now. I don't even know if it's a half of my life, a quarter of my life, you know. Um, I think when you put Allah in perspective, everything turns out well all the time. You can never fail. But in a busy world, like you say, today I'm sat with you. I hope like I will be more listening to you and my life will be more persistent. That's what I'm hoping to achieve.
Hmm. Well, sis, I can tell you that, providing Allah gives you, more years to live, that you still have plenty to come. I was 46 when I finally came to understand what I'm teaching here today. 46. I'm now, nearly 55. So yeah, it's never too late. And I do agree that there's a certain stage at 40, although I was still having children after 40. So I was still very much in that kind of reproductive situation then. So it was a lot later for me that I, started reflecting on things, because I don't think it's very easy to reflect when you have young children around, because they're constantly on your mind. So your mind is so busy, it doesn't slow down and reflect. And I think it's not so much the menopause that you're talking about. I think it's more to do with reaching a stage where the children are now a little bit more self-sufficient and not needing us as much, and that you've got days where they're at school during the day, that there's actually time to actually reflect. Whereas for well, for me, I've been parenting 29 years now. Um, During those years where you've got younger kids, and now I have a 5-year-old grandson, it's like all over again. That's, I think, why I can reflect and see that, because I'm noticing that when we have him, I don't have much time for reflection, because it's just grandma, 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 grandma the whole day. There's no time to think or reflect. So the good thing is that you are moving forward. It's life is just a lifetime of taking one step at a time, moving forward, inshallah. And we're never there. And you said about forgetting. Well, the Arabic word for humans is insan, and it's derived from the word forgetful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us that way. It's part of our test, right? And so you were saying about persistence. So am I correct in understanding from what you said that you think your issue is persistence because you don't keep persisting at it and it drops off and then you need to start all over again?
Yeah, I mean, part of like a community development worker for 25 years, at the end of a week, at the end of a day, we have to reflect, what went well, what didn't went well, and how we can do better for us and
Mm-hmm.
for the community we support. But I never put it into an Islamic perspective, you just you pray your daily salah, you get on with your house chores and things like that. You see, I think I wasn't sort of raised at a madrasa where your spiritual should just not be uh praying salah and reading the Quran. it should be part of your life, your day to day, you know, your nature, your personality, everything should be around Islam, and that's what I've learned recently. That if I have that, then I have everything.
So I'm going to give you a new perspective to look at it from. That means that the persistence isn't necessarily an issue. So number one, that spirituality or the spiritual side of things that you were talking about, we were born with that. But we've grown up in an education system which is global. Doesn't matter which part of the world that we've gone to school in, that has pretty much drummed that out of us and trained us to be intellectual thinkers rather than reflective and critical thinkers. And so the fact that you find yourself, not in that space at this time, or something that you feel like you have to work on, is only because we're naturally like that. It's all been covered by all the stories we were told. I don't mean, well, the fairy tales are fairy tales too, but I don't mean like storybook stories. I mean the beliefs that we were systematically taught about how we're meant to think and how we're meant to behave and how we're meant to engage in society. And it doesn't want, like, it's not designed for us to be free thinking, but for us to be compliant. So what you're doing is actually uncovering what's naturally there. And when it's uncovered, it won't be about being persistent. You just will be. It feels like at the moment you need to be persistent. But the reality is that persistence is already there, embedded in you, part of your fitra state. It just got covered and you're just uncovering it. And once it's uncovered, you don't need to worry about persistence. It'll just be.
I guess the benefit was that I work for a Muslim organization. My manager was a Muslim brother, and when we do any meetings or anything, alhamdulillah, he would praise Allah and things like that. And that really helped. I think it completely changed me, because I think in my youth I was quite cheeky, confrontational, but when I went into this job, because he was a Muslim practicing brother, it did sort of really help. But I guess I didn't nurture myself what I was practicing at work to practice it at home, that behavior.
Yeah, well, you're in the right spaces, because everything we do here is about reminding you to look within and find the answers there, because that's where they are. Alhamdulillah. So I'd love if Nahida or Muhammad, if you would like to share a takeaway from the session, anything that you found valuable.
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah, what I took away from yourself is I liked how you peacefully made us understand that at the end of the day we will be okay. Well, what the title is, we are all okay, and it's like gives you a very peaceful atmosphere from yourself, the peaceful vibe. And because I'm going through trials myself, I've had very rough, hard times, and joining these sessions made me feel like there's someone there, and there's people there that you can just talk to, and hopefully things will fall in its place the way you make it out, that things will just fall in its place. It's
Yes.
just natural for us to be feeling our feelings and the way when we go through troubles and trials. And then, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is there. He will help us out of them. I think it's more to do with that, when we're in our deen more, you reflect more when you're in your troubles, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will just take you out of them and He will pull you out. And it's more, for me, the real reason why I joined was because I was going through so many trials, and I've never spoken to no one, to even about my problems. It's always been Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I sort of want to get out to learn different things now, because I've been always in the home and with my children. I have, mashallah, 6 children, and it's very hard to look after them. There's 3 set of elders and 3 little youngers. And then how to anger management, learning about your classes and things. And I think it's just a beautiful thing to see that there are people out there like yourself, what you're going through, and there's someone of, it's like I feel you're like a mentor. Now you help someone through their problems. And I'm like, I've read your books, and I try to help myself in many situations. Obviously, you can't just talk about your situations to anyone and everyone, and you can just reflect every time and think that you will get out of it one day. But thank you so much anyway.
Alhamdulillah, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
And Allah guided you to be here. So inshallah, this is part of the solution for you.
Because whenever I would pray, I would always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help me and to guide me to what is right in each situation. I'd reflect and make dua. Then sometimes I'd just be really teary and upset as well at times, how to get myself out of it. And then I would try to look for answers in the Quran and to see what, obviously, sometimes I would be really stuck. Sometimes I'd be okay. But each time I would read Salah, then I'll be fine. So that's how I made myself get up. Every time I would fall and get myself back up.
Alhamdulillah. And that's the thing. It's not about us not falling. It's about us getting back up again.
Yeah.
We
I
get
always
so, we get so judgmental of ourselves for falling. But the thing is that the nature of this life that we're living. It's about getting back up. That's what this life is really about.
Yeah, that's what keeps you going every time. When you keep getting back up, you can do it. You can do it every time.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
It is hard though. It's very hard, life is that we're living, and every day's challenges that you have to go through. Really hard.
Alhamdulillah.
Praise be to Allah,
with
the one who has given us Islam.
With every difficulty, there's ease.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Muhammad shared that tawakkul isn't about wait and let things happen. You need to keep going. That's absolutely true. We're waiting, for the signs from Allah, but we're still moving forward at the same time. We don't just sit on our hands and go, all right, waiting. Alhamdulillah, we've got to keep moving forward. Jazakallah khair for sharing that, Muhammad, and also for being here. I don't get brothers coming very often, so I'm always very grateful when you're here, because we do wish to share this message with the brothers as well, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for being here. So Rakia, what was your takeaway, by the way, from today?
Yeah, I mean, alhamdulillah, what you're saying, is to focus on the moment, which is really important, rather than thinking about what happened yesterday, thinking about the future. That's what shaitan makes you carry, that unnecessary burden. And that's why, you know, I think we think very similar. I like your style, you see, alhamdulillah. I'm a very strong personality, so I can clash, you see. And I've been to other groups and they just waffle on and on and on. I have a very short concentration span. But then when I think about how much I talk, I wonder what people think of me. So, you know, I talk for England, but yeah, I have a short concentration span. That's not good, is it?
And in fact, I think that we gain more from listening than speaking anyway. So that could be something to reflect on, sis. Alhamdulillah.
That's sorry, I'm interrupting. That's so
No.
true. Yeah, if that's a reflection, really, you can.
Mm.
So it's true.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Well, Jazakallah khair for being with me. I actually love it so much more when I have people to talk to at the end and get to hear what you took from the session. Inshallah, we will continue tomorrow. Tomorrow is like the part 2 of today, where we're talking about that point where people reach anxiety levels of anxiety and panic. So it's kind of next level thinking and how we can overcome that, inshallah. So if you're around at the same time tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you then. And inshallah,